Before we get into Rahu and Ketu and each of the bhavas, I wanted to explain a couple of the ideas I'll be using to actually interpret the meanings of Rahu and Ketu and the bhavas. With the stuff I'm going to talk about in this class, you should be able to take the meaning of the bhava and come up with your own ideas about what to happen. So these are sort of the guiding ideas that I'll be using in the interpretations. But you can use these ideas to fly with the bhava as well. Okay, so first of all, some simple technical things. When we're looking at the concrete area of life that Rahu and Ketu is affecting, so that's the bhava, the concrete area that they're dealing with all this Rahu and Ketu stuff. The stuff they're really trying to succeed in respect to Rahu and Ketu, is the Rashi. They're trying to integrate that Rashi. So if you've got Ketu in Aries and Rahu in Libra, you're trying to integrate a balance between Ketu, between Aries and Libra in all the ways that we talked about. Because of that imbalance, it's going to impact certain areas of life. What areas of life? The areas of life, indicated by the bhava that Ketu and Rahu are in. But the thing that a person's really ultimately trying to achieve is the things we talked about, the Rashi. Okay? The experience they really need are the things indicated by the Rashis. And they're going to strive to get those experiences in the areas of life indicated by the bhava. So let's say a person has Rahu in a water sign. They need to make a deeper emotional connection to things, a deeper emotional connection to life, and a deeper emotional connection to God. So if Rahu's in the 10th house, or let's say if Rahu's in any of the Artha houses in the 2nd, 6th, or 10th, that emotional connection needs to be found in their working day-to-day life, in their struggles of their daily existence, the 6th house, in the fulfillment of their obligations if it's in the 10th house, in managing their responsibilities if it's the 2nd house, okay? But that's the area of life they're going to make that deeper emotional connection. But the thing that they need to feel satisfied with is a deeper emotional connection. As a simple example, because when we talk about connection, we're always talking about, we like to think of people, but we don't want to get in the habit of thinking of connection as just limited to people. It's the connection to life, connection to God, connection to spirit, through the agency of the house that Rahu's in. But as an example, so we can kind of see it better, let's take the classical thing of like Rahu in the 7th. So if Rahu in the 7th is in a water sign, the person wants to make a deeper emotional connection. That's what they need in life, okay? You wouldn't want to say, oh, you need to have more relationships. No, that's not true. They need to have a deeper emotional connection. They're going to find a deeper emotional connection in a relationship. But you'd be misguiding them if you said you have to have this bhava, you got to have a bigger partnership, a more important partnership, da-di-da-di-da. No, they simply have to have a deep emotional connection. That emotional connection is going to be found in the 7th bhava, in the relationship bhava. But if that Rahu is in the 10th house, in a water sign, you would say you need to have a deeper emotional connection. And that connection is going to be found through their work. Somehow they'll experience a deeper emotional connection through the process of their work. Okay? So you want to keep that in mind, because it's easy to overemphasize the bhava. If you overemphasize the bhava, you'll be telling the person, you need more of this bhava thing in your life, if Rahu's there. And you'll tell them, you need to let go more of this bhava that Ketu's in. But that's not what they need. That's just the avenue of the process. The bhava is just the realm in which the process is happening. The process that needs to happen is the process of the Rashi. Okay, and that's why so much of this course has been about the Rashis. The older course I did, Mastering Rahu and Ketu, did not have nearly as much information on Rashis. This course had much, much more, because they're just really so important, and so I wanted to really emphasize the Rashis this time. Because that's the experience they are looking for to balance, those Rashis. The area of life is just secondary, it's incendiary. We have to experience it on earth, alright. So that means we have to experience it through some concrete manifestation of God, some bhava, and which bhava it is really makes no difference. It just has to. So ultimately, if you got Rahu and Taurus, doesn't matter what bhava it's in, you're trying to have a balanced experience between Ketu and Taurus. Rahu and Taurus and Ketu and Scorpio, between Scorpio and Taurus. And all the people will have that commonality, but they'll be doing it in different avenues of life, with different things. But they'll all be seeking the very same ultimate experience, okay? So, don't expect to counsel them well if you focus just on the bhava. The bhava is the area of life, okay? It's the concrete area where they're going to work out and learn to develop the Rahu and come to a healthier relationship with the Ketu, okay? So we're looking for conjunctions to bhava cusps. Now, if there's more than one bhava cusp in the Rashi, so say you've got Rahu and Aries, and the third and fourth cusps are there, then it's going to influence both of those cusps, but the more significant cusp will be the one that Rahu's closest to. Okay? If there's no cusps in the Rashis of Rahu and Ketu, then the cusp that's closest to Rahu and Ketu, even though it's not in the same Rashi, is the cusp you want to consider them having the strongest influence on. Okay? So if you've got Rahu and Aries at 5 degrees, and then, say the 11th cusp at, 28 degrees of Pisces, and the first cusp at, 6 degrees of Taurus, the Rahu at 5 degrees of Aries is closer to the 12th cusp in Pisces, so that's the cusp you want to focus on. Okay? And you'll learn later why we do it that way. Okay? Alright, so that's how we find the area of life that we want to talk to the person about, that Rashi is trying to manifest through. Okay? So again, the area of life where Ketu's in is an area that'll be uptight. Okay, they'll be too disciplined, too over-controlled, too has to be this way. Okay? The area of life with Rahu will be an area where there's false, but it's not true. And it'll also be an out-of-control area. Okay, as we've talked about. Now, the interesting thing is, the more the Ketu area is uptight, the more the Rahu area is out of control. Okay, it's going to be a reflection, an opposite mirror, or an opposite reflection. So the more you restrain and control and try to make perfect the Ketu bhava, the more out of control will be your not your 7th house, my 7th house, because Rahu's there, but whatever house your Rahu's in. Okay? So, if your Rahu house is out of control and not working in a rational way and just being given lots of unexpected results and just literally being chaotic, which is the nature of Rahu, all you have to do to improve that Rahu house is let loose on the Ketu house a little bit more. Okay, just relax the Ketu house, stop being uptight, let the Ketu house get a little messy. Let the Ketu house get a little out of control. Let the Ketu house get out of sorts. Let the Ketu house crumble a little bit and go into disrepair. Let the Ketu house, fail. Let the Ketu house look badly, whatever. As soon as that happens, the Rahu house goes into place. Okay? See, because the sort of control of the Ketu house is a control that's making up for a lack of security always, right? Because Ketu, where we have this deep need to feel secure, not feeling that, we overwork that house. We're overworking that house and doing everything we can to convince ourselves that Ketu house is working. But we know it's not working because the Rahu house starts acting up, okay, and not functioning. So it's so easy to say, oh, this house is good and that house sucks. But no, the Rahu house is messing up because the Ketu house is actually not really as healthy as we think it needs to be. And so, because it's being covered up with discipline and control and, every effort's made to make it seem like that house has got it together, but it's really not on a deeper level, there's a need for the person to realize that by making the opposite house out of control. But as soon as they stop being fake in the Ketu house, and let the Ketu house just flow more how it really is, even though it's really not so perfect as Ketu wants it to be, then there's no need for the Rahu house to act up, and so it'll settle down. And so basically, the more controlled, the more perfect the Ketu house tries to be, the more out of control and messed up the Rahu house will be. And I use that word false with Ketu too. Yes, there is a falsity to the Ketu house. Because there's an effort to be made for something to look perfect when it's not, and that's also fake. Because, the Ketu needs to have a level of perfection that's not realizable. And so whatever's actually there is never good enough. And so there's a falsity of trying to do and appear like there's more perfection than there is really humanly possible to be. And we have in Parashara, when he says about Rahu and Ketu, he says, Rahu lives in the forest and he's horrible, and Ketu is like Rahu. Okay, so, Ketu, it gives the very same things as Rahu. He has his own breed of being false. Okay, he has his own breed of being out of control. Okay, Rahu's out of control on a daily basis. Ketu's controlled until he cracks. Then he explodes out of control, and then he settles into his contracted, uptight position again. When things get wound up too tight, it's just a matter of before they explode, right? That's how Ketu gets out of control. So, lots of times when you're looking at charts, that some of the things you expect will be actually in the opposite. You might find that sometimes that the Ketu house is totally out of control because the person's in I've been uptight so long I can't hold on to it anymore, so now I'm absolutely losing it, okay, phase. It might be in that phase. So you always do want to remember that Rahu and Ketu ultimately are the same animal, but just operating in a very different light. So while there is this distinguishment between what they're doing, oftentimes they'll seem to swap roles for a time, okay? All right. Okay. Here's some important things. The individual will make attempts throughout their life in the Rahu area and have a deep craving for it. But these attempts will only be half-hearted attempts, or as deep down they don't believe they can achieve or deserve the Rahu bava. And they also do not wish to let go of the Ketu bava, which must be relinquished before they can truly experience the Rahu bava. So basically, the person always wants, throughout their life, they want, and they're making the efforts they're able to towards the Rahu bava. They want it usually, not usually, but always more than they will let anybody know, okay? And with the Rahu bava, one of the reasons we only make half-hearted attempts because we don't feel like we really deserve it or we can really do it. But we don't want people to know that. We don't want ourselves to know it, because wanting something that we don't feel like we can achieve or we don't feel we can deserve is acknowledging a huge weakness in ourselves. And it's the nature of the ego to not want to reveal its deepest weaknesses, because that makes it vulnerable. The ego feels vulnerable if its weaknesses are known, because its weaknesses that get exploited. Okay? So, you'll see people making fun of the Rahu bava, making light of the Rahu bava, making it seem like it's not that important to them, or it's something they actually don't want. But the truth is, everyone from day one wants the Rahu bava in a big way. They just don't allow themselves to appreciate how much they want it, and they make light of it. They try to make it seem like it's something way less important on their priority list, because of the fact that to acknowledge that they really desperately want something that they're so out of touch with is a difficult thing to do. Okay? The individual will often deny their need of the Rahu bava both to themselves and others, but they always want it and need it. Okay? Then, the individual does not believe that they deserve the Rahu bava because they don't feel good enough about the Ketu bava. Okay? Why don't they deserve the Rahu? Because my Ketu bava is not good enough. Okay? As hard as they work the Ketu bava, it's never good enough, and so they always feel undeserving. Ketu is only satisfied with absolutes, as we talked about. So in the Ketu bava, we're always going to feel like we're not really doing the Ketu bava good enough. Okay, no matter how great a job we do with the Ketu bava, we're always going to feel it's not good enough, because it's never going to be absolute perfection. So out of that, there's always a self-worth issue, a self-doubt issue, an issue of some lack. And so the person doesn't think they really deserve this house of Rahu either. So there's a lot going on that makes it hard to get that Rahu house first. It's an area they're out of touch with. Second, it's an area they don't acknowledge the importance of because their security paradigm says, yeah, I want that Rahu thing, but what I really, really need is the Ketu thing. But the truth is they really, really need the Rahu thing more than they need the Ketu thing. Okay? The Ketu things, they've had plenty of that. Okay? And then there's also the undeservingness of, gosh, I really feel a lack with my Ketu bava, so how can I really get the Rahu bava? How do I really deserve the Rahu bava? So you're always going to see deservation issues about them feeling they deserve something in the bava that Rahu's in. Okay, so another key word for Rahu and a bava is deep down inside you really don't feel like you deserve this to work out. Or deep down inside you can't see this working out for yourself. Why? Because the Ketu area is not something you really feel okay about. Okay, you don't feel like you've done good enough in that area. Then the fun thing is, the Rahu Bhava will manifest effects that seem unfair or out of the blue, meaning unexpected events that you can't find a path to. Okay? With most events in life, we can, if we are honest with ourselves, we'll see a chain of events that led up to this. So in Saturn dasha, you get really sick, or you have financial troubles. But if you look back through your life, you'll say, yeah, I was really setting myself up for all these problems. These problems, if I'm honest with myself, I owe up to them. I can see how I created these problems. With every other planet that we have, the problems that come, we can really see how, yeah, I prepared myself for these problems. I set myself up. And even when great things happen, we can say, yeah, I can really see how I kind of set myself up for these great things. But when Rahu dasha comes, and they say it's such a roller coaster, you don't know what's going to happen, it's hard to predict. The reason we say that about Rahu dasha is because the things that happen don't have so much of a linear relationship to the rest of our life. Some things do. But some of the biggest things that happen in Rahu dasha, we can't see the linear relationship of, wow, I really set myself up for this. I can really see how I deserve this to happen, whether it's a good or bad thing. Okay? Some things, yes, we can see that because they're given by the Lord of Rahu and so on. But then there's just the Rahu quality of, wow, where did this come from, this good or bad thing? But the truth is, the events of Rahu are very much the result of a chain of events, a chain of activity. But not a chain of activity in this world, not a chain of activity of what we do or don't do. It's a chain of activity of what's been happening in our subconsciousness. Rahu and Ketu are our subconsciousness. The moon is our conscious mind, which has its dark side, the unknown side. And that unknown side is literally the nodes of the moon. That's our subconsciousness. And it's our subconsciousness that's ruling the majority of our life, the majority of our decisions. And that's why Rahu and Ketu are so important, because it's these Rahu and Ketu needs and complexes that are running the majority of our life and limiting our happiness on every level. Okay? Because that's what the subconscious does. It limits our happiness on every level. Okay? That's why hypnotism works. That's why neurolingual programming works. Because it works with the subconsciousness to allow miraculous things to possibly happen. Okay? Alright. The events of Rahu are the result of what is stored in the subconsciousness. We get what we are. There's a balance between the inside and the outside. And that's what Rahu is, the number 8 planet. And this balance happens during the dasha of Rahu. Okay, so whatever garbage is in your subconsciousness is going to manifest in the Rahu dasha. Whatever wonderful things are in your subconsciousness are going to miraculously happen in the dasha of Rahu. Okay? I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig here and give you 2 examples. One thing that happened in my Rahu dasha is me and my wife, as some of you know, were riding our tandem bike down the road, which we've been riding on for years. And during this day, we've been really, really busy. Like the last year and a half have been so busy, we couldn't even remember having had a time just for us, just to relax, do whatever we wanted. And so a day comes along where all of a sudden all the kids are gone, Everything is taken care of. There's no emergencies. Nobody's asking us to do anything. And we're like, this is strange. We could do anything we want today. What can we do? So we decided we were going to go on a tandem ride, which we hadn't done in a while. So we jumped up on our tandem bike, and we had really the nicest tandem ride we'd ever had in our entire lives. Yet 1.5 miles from our house, we get smashed by a pickup truck that nearly kills my wife and broke a couple bones in myself too. And, so here we are one moment having the time of our lives, having one of the best days we've had. And then all of a sudden, boom, we get smashed by a car. And it seemed like so unfair, and it seemed like so, like just, well, how did this happen? This shouldn't have happened, We weren't being mean to people. We didn't deserve that kind of abuse, it seemed. Why did the Rahu Dasha bring that about? Well, the interesting thing, when I was growing up as a kid, whenever I imagine myself getting together with a girl and, falling in love and all that good stuff, I always had a horrid outcome. At the end of the story, the end of the fantasy, was always the woman getting killed. So my subconsciousness just had this quality to it that it couldn't really see myself having a good experience with the woman without the woman dying. And so that was Rahu. And in the Rahu Dasha, that distorted, vision, that distorted fantasy nearly manifested by, us having one of the most wonderful days we've ever had. And at the end of the day, my wife almost dies, And so that's the kind of stuff Rahu brings in your life. So anything that's churning around in your subconsciousness, that has churned around, that was something that just churned around my subconsciousness really until I got married. After I got married, it didn't really churn around, but still there was a seed of that Rahu there, a seed of consciousness that needed to manifest at some point in a really shocking event. So if we look at a Rahu event in the light of what our subconsciousness has dwelled on or experienced or fantasized on, we'll see it. Another thing I've always sort of fantasized about in my life, there's been this subconscious feeling of wanting a really amazing house. It's a real estate thing, I guess. And it wasn't a huge ambition. It wasn't something I'd say, one day I'm going to have an amazing house. It was just this subconscious kind of hope to have a beautiful property someday. Well, in my Rahu Dasha, I end up getting this really unique property, that really seemed like an unreachable possibility to even get a house as strange and unique as the house I currently own. So good and bad things that kind of just you're dwelling around in your subconsciousness, these intangible hopes and fears and dreads. Those are the types of things that manifest in the Rahu Dasha. Rahu Dasha very much is the dasha of all of our dreams, both our dreams and our nightmares can come true. Okay? So if you're perplexed about why did this happen in my Rahu Dasha, or if your client goes, I can't believe this happened to me, just say, well, let's talk about this Rahu area of life and tell me about your fantasies on this house. Tell me about the deeper just kind of thoughts that come up about this house. The fantasies you've had, the images you've had that have you, when you're just dwelling on nothing, that come to you. And there'll usually be a link between those sort of subconscious dwellings, as those subconscious dwellings perk up into our conscious mind every once in a while, and the actual events of Rahu that are unexplainable. Okay, then, the better the condition of Saturn, the less the subconscious fear in the person, and so less the tragic events of Rahu Dasha. So, always look at Saturn when the person's running Rahu Dasha to see how many fears are stored there. If there's a lot of fears stored there, then yes, Rahu Dasha is going to manifest more turbulent nightmare-type fantasies, than if Saturn's solid. And you can look at the Lajitadya Vashtas of Saturn to judge that, Okay, then we have some rules. We have the rule. Rahu's like Saturn and Ketu's like Mars. That's just a known fact in astrology. A lot of old astrologers, that's simply how they read Rahu and Ketu. Now, to get a little more specific, the bava with Ketu is the bava where the person will put up their biggest fight. You can see a person who's sweet and demure in every area of their life, who's non-conflictual, etc., who just can go with the flow of everything. Everything's good. It doesn't matter. Yet when it comes down to the bava that Ketu's in, that's where, when that bava is threatened, that's when they'll turn into the mama bear. That's when they'll do whatever it takes. They'll fight clean, they'll fight dirty, they'll fight every possible way they can to preserve that bava. Okay, and that's Mars. Mars is the planet we use to fight something. And so, if you want to see what type of fighter a person is, you will have no idea until you see their Ketu bava threatened. And that's when you'll see them go to fight. Okay? And for the Ketu bava, we'll fight harder than we will for any other bava. Okay? And so as we go through the bhavas, I'll talk about that fight that people will tend to do. Some of them are like, oh, it's real obvious if Ketu's in this house, she'll fight for this real strongly. But sometimes it's like, what would a Ketu in that person really fight for? So that's an interesting thing. That's where they'll put up their biggest fight. Okay, they'll let everything else go in the fight of life, in the battle of life. But the last thing they'll fight for most desperately will always be that Ketu bava. Okay. Then the bava with Rahu is the bava that they hope to somehow survive. So they just somehow hope to survive the Rahu bava. Okay. And again, just to kind of make some fun jokes about myself. When I when I was 28 years old, I sat down and said, okay, I'm just going to sit down and predict when I'm going to get married, if at all. So I looked up, I decided I'm going to do it real seriously now. Okay, I'm going to just focus on just that and make sure I don't miss anything. So I started looking, do I have early marriage, medium marriage, or late marriage? And I looked like medium marriage, which is between like 26 to 30 for a guy. I said, okay. And my first thought after predicting that first prediction was, so I can just make it to 30, I'm home free. So that's Rahu in the 7th. I just want to survive the whole relationship part of life. And so if I can get to 30 and not get married, I've survived and I'm home free. I don't have to deal with that Rahu stuff anymore. That was like the first thought that came to my mind. So that's a typical Saturn. Saturn just wants to survive. So Rahu gives the results of Saturn means we just hope to survive the bava that Rahu's in. Whatever life throws at in that bava, we just hope to survive it. Okay? And then throughout my life, I always thought like marriage would just be this thing that, wow, I really didn't feel like I could possibly survive marriage, And just barely here I am 19 years later surviving quite well, actually. Okay? So, it's a funny bava that, when you see people, and I know, like me, if you meet me, you'll say I make a lot of jokes about the endings of relationships and terminations of relationships and stuff like that, because to me, the very idea of just surviving a relationship seems like a superhuman feat, because I have Rahu in the 7th house. So, be aware that in the person's consciousness is this concern that they just hope to be able to survive the impact of that bava on their life. Okay? And it sounds so funny because every bava is just really something that can be so wonderful in our lives. It's a concrete thing to benefit from and enjoy in our lives. All the bhavas are that. Yet, the Rahu bava is a bava we just feel, if I can just survive this. So around the 12th, if I could just survive jumping off the cliff and surrendering, Rahu in the 10th is if I could just survive, all this success, if I just survive staying on top, whatever it is, it's just this desire to survive. How does a person deal with that? They just deal with it with attrition. That's the quality of Saturn. It's just you hang in there, you just survive, and you don't give up. Saturn is that planet of attrition, of no matter how much this hurts, I'm just going to survive. So no matter how this hurts, I'm going to somehow stay alive. No matter how much this hurts, I'm going to somehow stay there. That's what you need to survive the Rahu bava. And so the quality of Saturn will show the struggle, how strong the person is to survive that bava. If the Saturn's in great shape, they'll be able to make that bava, they'll be able to continue surviving with that bava, they'll be able to keep that bava and stay alive. The worse Saturn gets, the more difficult it is for the person to keep that bava and continue to survive, which means there's a greater chance of them letting go of that bava. So there's always a really good chance that a person, the ability for the person to keep the bava that Rahu is in is indicated by Saturn. Okay, so when you start predicting the Rahu dasha or something, and your first thing you should be wondering about is, wow, are they going to be able to keep this bava through the Rahu dasha, or is this bava going to be something that gets destroyed on them, that they just can't hold it together, they can't stay there, because it's all about staying power with the Rahu bava. And the condition of Saturn will let you know that. So if you see that Saturn's in bad shape, say it's debilitated or something, then you can pretty much predict that the bava is going to suffer dramatically, that they're not going to be able to hold that bava together. They won't be able to stay with that bava. They would literally want to get away from that bava too much to stay with it. So when difficulties arise, they'll leave. If Saturn's really strong, though, even when difficulties arise and they want to leave, that attrition of Saturn will help them stay there and suffer through whatever it is that's plaguing them at the moment and help them get through. Okay? Then, like I mentioned with the Ketu is the bava we're going to fight the strongest for. Okay? The condition of Mars shows a person's ability to fight. Do they fight intelligently? Do they fight strategically? Meaning, do they fight in a way that actually will get them what they want? Okay? A lot of people will fight in a way that does nothing but push away what they want. That's not a healthy way to fight. So, a good Mars helps a person fight for their Ketu bava when it gets threatened in such a way that they win the battle. They'll always put up their biggest fight with Ketu, but are they capable of fighting to win, or are they going to fight in a way that just creates more problems, or which doesn't give them a hope or chance of winning? Or will their best fight be a meager effort that really wouldn't win any battles? Okay? Because sometimes the person's biggest fight is still a pretty meager effort. And all those things are going to be indicated by the well-being of Mars. So you always got to look at the well-being of Mars and the well-being of Saturn to see the person's ability to really but to keep that bava going in a healthy direction. If Mars is in good shape, once the person has something with the Ketu bava, they're going to continue to be able to keep it because they're going to be able to fight in a way that allows them to win whenever the Ketu bava is threatened. If Mars is in bad shape, they won't be able to make a fight that is worth 2 cents, or they'll make a fight that's just a waste of energy but doesn't help them win the battle. And then they'll lose that area of Ketu. And for Rahu, if Saturn is strong and well dispositioned, they'll have the attrition, the ability to hang in there when it seems impossible to them. But if Rahu's in bad shape, when it feels impossible to them, they drop out. Okay? So a lot to be seen for the longevity of the things of Rahu and Ketu's bava based on the well-being of Saturn and Mars. Okay? So you'll see people making very different levels of effort with their bhavas of Rahu and Ketu depending on the condition of Saturn and Mars. So the key word here is they'll be making very different efforts. Okay? Their effort will be much different. The effort to hang in there, the effort to solve the problems of Ketu, or the effort to hang in there of Saturn will be very different. Okay? The efforts to hang in there of Rahu will be very different depending on the condition of Saturn. Now, besides that, there's the sheer fate of it all. Just the fate of that bava, okay? Well, the fate of that bava is going to be indicated by the planets in the bava and the lord of the bava, the planets aspecting the bava according to our normal predictive rules, as I talked about in concrete chart and Varga analysis with Gemini. Just using that will give you an idea of the fated events of that bava, okay? And that, of course, is a whole nother thing. That's a whole predictive level, and some person they might have the attrition to hang in there no matter what, but they have the fate for the bhava to get destroyed. So even though they're hanging in there, circumstances will conspire to take that bhava away. You can hang in there, but that doesn't mean the bhava can't be taken away, right? So you can, hate your job and hang in there and hang in there and hang in there, and then one day your company goes out of business, and so of course you get let off and you don't have a job. Even though you hung in there for years, you can still lose your job. Even though you hung in there for years, your spouse can die. Whatever the case may be. Or you can hang in there for years, but then your spouse might not hang in there or might leave. So don't predict the bhava is going to last forever just because Ketu or Saturn is in great shape, and allowing the person to fight for that bhava or to hang into that bhava if it's Rahu's bhava. The karmic circumstances will also bring that bhava down or bring it up. If they have good karmic circumstances revolving around the bhava, because the Lord is good and has good aspects and good planets in it according to predictive astrology, then even if they can't really hang in there in the Rahu bhava because their Saturn's weak, and even if they can't put up a good fight to make the Ketu bhava work, then they can still have a lot of that bhava working and have it last quite a long time. So you always have to balance their ability with the karmic circumstances, okay? And they can be very different pictures. Okay, and then a little more about the fight of Ketu, indicated by Mars, and the attrition of Rahu, indicated by Saturn, the ability to hang in there. So the fight of Ketu, that means, yes, actively fighting against anything that attempts to, that threatens your Ketu bhava. Okay? So, anything that threatens your Ketu bhava, you have to fight it. But it's also, Mars has another side, which is fighting yourself. Okay? Meaning, okay, where do I have a bad relationship with this bhava? Where do I make this bhava impossible? What do I need to stop doing with this bhava? Mars also helps a person win that fight, okay? And it helps a person to behave better with respect to that bhava, a good Mars. So that also helps that bhava do better. Okay, Saturn, he has to hang in there amongst the events of Rahu. He just has to hang in there, helps Rahu just hang into that Rahu bhava, help the person hang into that Rahu bhava. But also, that's sort of the external part of Saturn, but also internally, they have to surrender the ego. They have to let go of some of their needs, some of their hopes, some of their desires. They have to let go of their needs for validation, their needs for importance. All the ego needs need to be relinquished through Saturn. A person has to let go of their ego needs. So wherever the Rahu bhava is, yes, we have to let go of all of our ego needs. And the stronger the Saturn, the better off we're able to make that surrendering act, to let go of that. Again, Saturn, as we've talked about, is the planet that, when we use it right, allows us to surrender the ego, to let go of the ego. Okay? To let the ego die, symbolically speaking, and not take everything so personally. So yes, in the Rahu bhava, we have to not take things personally. We have to hang in there and not take everything personally. Okay? Our ability to not take things personally, which means to take things in a way that doesn't make our ego hurt, is Saturn. So the better Saturn, the more people will take the Rahu experiences as just what's happening and rather take them directly, personally, as a direct attack upon them, as a direct statement against them, as a direct demeaning thing, but just to take all the things not personally. Okay? And that helps tremendously in holding the Rahu bhava together. Because the Rahu bhava is a bhava where a person has a lot of fears and they're out of touch with it. And so it's really easy for the things that happen in that Rahu bhava to be taken very personally, to be taken as a stamp of what you are and who you are and how bad you are when bad things happen. We can easily take those things personally as an affront to who we are, as a direct attack upon who we are, and things like that. And so with a good, strong Saturn, a person's able to not take those things personally as much. And for these, look at the Lajitadya Vashtas. For the well-being of Mars and the well-being of Saturn, look at the Lajitadya Vashtas. If Saturn's starved, the person will feel under attack. If they're starved by Moon, they'll feel emotionally attacked. If it's starved, meaning they'll feel rejected and unwanted and unloved and take that personally. If the Sun is starved in Saturn, their ego will feel attacked. Okay, they'll feel like who they are is under attack constantly, and so they will be very miserable in that Rahu experience. And if Mars is starving Saturn, well, you can kind of say when Mars is under attack, in a way, they'll constantly feel threatened. Okay, they'll constantly feel frustrated. They'll, the fact that things are hard, they'll just take it personally and feel like it's their curse, that God's against them, the other person's against them, the Rahu Bhavas against them. They'll literally just feel like life is making it harder than it should be made. They'll take it personally. It's harder for me than it really should be. It's not fair how it's really harder for me. And they'll take the fact that it's just a hard thing very personally, like it's a direct affront to them and what life wants them to have. So it gets frustrating, it gets more frustrating. And of course, when a person gets frustrated, they might just want to say, screw it, I'm done with this. And that's what you might see happening. Okay? So keep an eye on that Saturn and Mars, because their conditions will impact exactly the person's ability to handle the Rahu and Ketu bhavas. So as I talk about Rahu and Ketu and the bhavas starting in the next video, just to what degree a person can survive the Rahu bhava, and just how hard they'll fight and how intelligently fight the Ketu bhava, and how they'll discipline themselves in both bhavas will be dependent on these Ketu, the strengths of the Lajitati strengths of Mars and Saturn. Okay? Okay. One of we only have one problem in our lives, I'd say. Okay? The only reason anyone ever came to an astrologer is because they're stuck on a level of existence that is unsatisfactory. I'm stuck with my health, I'm stuck with my love life, I'm stuck with my money, I'm stuck with my career, I'm stuck with my music, whatever. My life is not going in that upward spiral. Okay? What we all want our life to go up in an upward spiral. We want a little more money, a little more love, a little more skill, a little more respect, a little more vitality, a little more happiness. And if that isn't increasing year by year, we're stuck. The thing we were super excited about 5 years ago, if we're living that very same life now, we're feeling stuck. And the horoscope, as the planets move around the horoscope, this is literally what's happening. We're going around and around. But there's places where we're stuck, okay? Where life gets stuck and we feel stagnant, we don't feel like anything is getting any better. So things were good, it's not good enough, okay, for now. It should be better. We want ever new. It has to always be somewhat better, somewhat different. Well, it's Rahu and Ketu that get us stuck, as I started to mention in the previous video. We're actually most stuck because of our security paradigm of Ketu, okay? But the house we have to focus on being stuck is the Rahu house. Because of our security paradigm, we're not able to act on the Rahu house. Because we can't act on the Rahu house, everything gets jammed up. But we can't act on the Rahu house because of the security paradigm of Ketu. So the bottom line is Ketu. But that line of activity is Rahu. So to get unstuck, we always have to deal with Rahu. We always have to take the next step towards Rahu. Okay? So I just want to make sure I read everything and my notes too. What does stuck mean? Being stuck is when we are unable to attract the next better thing in our life. It's literally that. It's being unable to attract the next best thing in our life. That's why people go to astrologers. When will I attract this into my life is what they ask. When will I get married? When will I have a better job? When will I have more money? When will I get better? Which is really, when will I attract the right healer? When will I attract the right person? When will I attract the right job? When will I attract more money? We only get things because we attract them, like a magnet. Everything we get or don't have is based on our magnetism. We're like magnetic spheres, okay? And we are like little magnets. And that's how astrology works. That's how everything works. And we're going to pull in things because of what we are, in our magnetism. And if you really start looking at this in people, you'll see how some people just constantly magnetize certain events, certain type of people in life, certain type of mean people, certain type of nice people, certain kind of women, certain kind of men, certain kind of men and women, whatever. We constantly magnetize certain things into our space. And if we observe what we're magnetizing our space, it'll show us what we are working on in ourselves. Because we're magnetizing what's happening in ourselves right now. Like really interesting, in my life, I've been magnetizing skinny men into my life. And that's a signal of what I'm working on within myself. And the funny thing is, right when I was starting to attract these men into my life, I was coming to lots of these own realizations about my inner skinny man. So we are attracting things into our life. Okay? Now, why are we attracting things? How do we do this? Well, it's not our conscious mind that attracts things. It's our subconscious mind that attracts things. Our subconscious is literally attracting things into our life. It's creating a magnetism. That's why mantras work. When you do a mantra, it doesn't work until it goes into your subconsciousness. Once the mantra goes into your subconsciousness, that's when it works. How do you know the mantra goes into your subconsciousness? Because you wake up in the morning and the first thing you hear is the mantra. Everyone ever been hung up on somebody? You know, as you're falling asleep, you think of them. As you wake up thinking to them. Because right when you go to sleep and right when you wake up, your mind is slipping in and out of that subconscious state. So you can see what your subconscious is focusing on based on what you're waking up and going to sleep to. Right as you're drifting off and right as you're waking up. There's that little bit of time where your consciousness gets a glimpse of what's happening in your subconscious mind. That's what you're going to attract. Somehow, in some form, in some way, sometime, you'll attract that. It might be years away before the magnetism gets strong enough to pull it in, or it might just happen that day. So that's how mantras work. By doing mantras, by doing affirmations, by drawing pictures of what you hope to have in your life, by all these prosperity techniques, by hypnotism, they're programming the subconscious mind to believe something, to churn something. And we call it churning the ether, some people call it. But it's really not that. It's just creating a dynamo of magnetism within oneself that will attract things into our life. So when a person feels stuck, it simply means they're not attracting into their life what they want. Why? Because they don't have the magnetism. Okay, they don't have the magnetism to attract it, because what's in the subconscious mind is not, is what they have. Okay, what their conscious mind wants, what their hearts want, is more than that. So until there's a subconscious shift, no healing happens. Until there's a subconscious shift, no healing happens. Nothing gets better in our life. We don't get a better relationship. We don't get a higher paying job. We don't get healthier. Okay? We don't get more respect until a subconscious shifts happen within ourselves. Okay? Rahu and Ketu are the subconsciousness as the nodes of the moon. That's their role. And that's why they're so important, because our subconsciousness is running the show. Our conscious mind is not running the show. Okay? Only Rahu and Ketu can make us stuck. The unconscious security paradigm of Ketu gets us stuck on one hand. The fears of Rahu get us stuck on the other hand. Ultimately, we are more stuck because of Ketu, but the only way to unstick Ketu is to unstick Rahu first. And as soon as that happens, Ketu becomes unstuck. So to get unstuck, just do something with respect to more in the Rahu bava. Get more connected to the Rahu bava. Take the courage, take the honesty to connect more to the Rahu bava. The minute your subconsciousness has a realization, a revelation of that Rahu bava, as soon as that happens, your life will get unstuck. Okay? This will require deep examination of what one really hopes to have in life and the development of the appreciation of just how important that area is to them. So, what I found with the Rahu bava, one of the reasons we're stuck with it, because we don't allow our subconsciousness free reign with it. The subconsciousness is going, yes, I need that Rahu bava. Yes, I want that Rahu bava. But then another part of our subconscious, the trained part that wants to survive, the security paradigm part, is saying, I really don't need that. So there's this huge conflict between your subconsciousness, where Ketu and Rahu is. One part of the subconscious, Ketu, is saying, This is what's worked. This is what's proven in the past. Therefore, it's a positive anchor. If I can have this in my life, everything's okay. I'll feel like it's okay. What's a positive anchor? Well, a positive anchor is an experience you've had that you felt strongly about, and now that experience will make you feel good. Like say the first time you kissed a girl, you were listening to a rock band. Say you were listening to Santana the first time you kissed a girl, okay? And you loved the girl. It was a wonderful time. Well, every time you hear Santana, it's going to be a positive anchor, okay? It's going to make you feel good, okay? Now, let's say that, a girl broke your heart one time and another band was playing. Well, whenever you hear that band, it's a negative anchor. And it's going to stimulate the feelings in your subconsciousness that are the subconscious memories of that painful experience to come up. And you'll be depressed whenever you hear that song, okay? Ketu is our biggest subconscious anchor of what has allowed us to survive. It's a huge subconscious anchor. It's this anchor that says, yes, I experienced this working and saving my life. Therefore, the guaranteed way to survive and continue living is to continue with this Ketu process. Okay? Because it was such a powerful experience of when a person had to achieve that Ketu need in some previous life. Then Rahu is the subconsciousness that yearns for something else, that has a need for something else. It's the part of us that's not getting something. And then the subconscious, what we're not getting churns around in the subconsciousness. Okay? It churns around in the subconsciousness as emptiness. Okay? And so where Rahu is, that's where we want to fulfill our emptiness. That's where we need to fulfill our emptiness. Okay? Ultimately. So there's a subconscious anchor of what's worked and the subconscious anchor of what we can say we need to experience. Okay? Because the parts, as we go about playing our security paradigm, we deny certain parts of ourselves. We might think we're doing everything intelligently and sensibly, but to the whole to all of our beingness, all of us that has all kinds of various needs, all the needs that the security paradigm is not allowing for as being important, that those needs get pushed into the subconsciousness and become a force of what we yearn for, a force for what we dream about. Because while the security paradigm just has the need to survive, which is Saturn, okay, and to exist, which is the Sun, because remember Ketu, Sun, Saturn are triad. That's not all of us. We also have the needs of the Moon, the needs to connect with things, the need to experience new things, the needs for variety, the needs of Mercury, which is the need for balance in our life. Okay, the need to not be more or less perturbed by having this or not having this, but true balance. That's Mercury. And all those things are found in the Rahu house. When we connect to that Rahu house, we achieve those things that the Moon and Mercury need. So basically, there's all these needs of Moon and Mercury. Okay, the need to explore life in all of its many forms, which is Mercury. The need to adapt and evolve, which is the Moon. Those needs are being neglected because of the security paradigm. The need for new, which is Moon, experiences. Okay? The need for developing new skills, which is Mercury. All those things, those needs aren't getting met because the security paradigm is focused on existing the Sun and surviving Saturn. But Rahu is about the Moon and Mercury. And so those needs not getting met irritate the subconsciousness. Our conscious mind can push them aside and say, I really don't need those things of my Rahu bava. But the subconscious knows better. The subconscious knows how much the different cells are craving that Rahu experience. So we have this battle between our subconsciously, where on the one hand the subconscious wants the subconscious wants to push us into the Rahu area. On the other hand, the subconscious is like, no, I have to stay in the Ketu area. So when we're looking at Rahu Ketu, we're looking at the person's subconscious battles. And as a result of that energy not being stuck, their whole lives get stuck. We get stuck along that Rahu Ketu axis. And the secret to unsticking it is to allow the subconscious mind, allow our conscious mind, let me put it this way, to allow our conscious mind, this is the exact way to say it, to allow our conscious mind to appreciate the need of the subconscious mind. And when our conscious mind appreciates the need of the subconscious mind, then we realize something. Because while this conscious mind is running the show, what we're striving for is self-realization, or what we call consciousness. Consciousness is simply realizing consciously what is already true. What's true is what's in our subconsciousness. But if we don't realize that consciously, it's a problem. That's why learning about Rahu and Ketu is so important, because we're becoming conscious of our subconsciousness. Okay? The truth is, everything is energy. I am not sitting on a bench looking at a camera talking to you guys. It's all just the energy of divine consciousness. That's the truth. But that truth is irrelevant to any of us. It's as irrelevant and unuseful to any of us as what's happening in our subconscious is if we don't consciously realize what's in our subconsciousness. So until we consciously realize the fact that, everything is just the energy of divine manifestation, knowing that is useless. It's a fucking stupid thing. It serves nobody any good at all. It just can give them an excuse to be lazy, maybe. So nothing is useful until our conscious mind appreciates it and accepts it and integrates it. So what we're really doing in life, we're learning to appreciate our subconscious mind. We're learning to realize our subconsciousness when we deal with Rahu and Ketu. After we've realized our subconsciousness, the subconsciousness indicated by Rahu and Ketu, only after that are we capable of realizing deeper levels of consciousness, which ultimately means the level of consciousness of the divine. So first we have to become conscious of our subconsciousness, which means become a well-integrated being where Rahu and Ketu are operating in a conscious and not unconscious manner. That's Rahu and Ketu in the Rashi chart. Okay? And then we have to ultimately get to Rahu and Ketu in the D60 chart, which is where we struggle to consciously realize the truth of things. Okay? And in between that, we have the realizations we have to make in the Dwadasamsha, which we're going to get into in this course still. We're going to get into those important vargas. But then for now, the important thing to realize is we need to consciously realize Rahu and Ketu. And the first step to that means consciously realizing what's in the subconsciousness. Okay? Only then is it useful. Only then can we act intelligently and through choice, and act in a way that we're unstuck. Okay? So to get unstuck, just do something with respect more to in the Rahu bava. But we really can't do that unless we make a shift of the understanding of really what's in our subconsciousness. We really have to come to terms with really what's in my subconsciousness. What's my true subconscious need? And to allow that subconscious need to become a conscious desire, a conscious focus. Okay? And the minute that happens, all of life gets unstuck. Okay? So I had the good fortune of my Rahu maturation and Rahu dasha my Rahu dasha starting about the time of my Rahu maturation. Okay? So my Rahu matured, and then I went to my Rahu dasha. And the results of the Rahu dasha, Rahu maturation always are that we realize the Ketu bava is not going to just cut it all by itself. The Ketu bava fails us, and we realize, wow, I really need that Rahu dasha. I'm not going to be able to manage without that Rahu bava. Sorry, not the Rahu dasha, the Rahu bava. So my Rahu maturation, I goes, geez, I got certain things that I just can't handle by myself, Ketu in the first house. I always thought I can handle everything I needed myself. And here I am, there's certain things I'm just not going to be able to handle without the help of another person. Okay? Certain personal things and personal limitations that I was just not going to be able to do what I needed to do for myself. I was going to only be able to do it with the help of another person. So I had this conscious realization that I needed help. And then shortly after that conscious realization manifested, my whole life got unstuck. Just realizing that for the past several years, literally the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, for instance, my income just stayed at the same level. Every year I did my taxes. My taxes were about $3,000. It was my total income within $3,000 of the previous year. A little up, a little down. Just hovering right in that ballpark of, you're just maintaining your financial life. And it was a good enough financial life to buy a cheap house. It was a good enough financial life to keep my kids alive. But it wasn't a good enough financial life to have a new car and buy anything I wanted and send my kids anywhere they wanted to go, or go to Europe if I wanted to, or just go to India on a whim. I would have to budget all those things. I'd have to save up and budget for anything unusual. But it was totally no complaints, but it was fine. But it was just that way for years. And, for about 6 years, I guess you'd say. And I went to the video classes, and the video classes, I thought everyone was going to love the videos. I was going to have so many people signing up. But actually, no more people signed up for the video classes than I'd had in my audio classes. So my income from teaching when I went into the videos stayed exactly the same. And actually, it was more work in lots of ways. It was more work, actually. And I was sort of stuck with my financial stuff. I was stuck with not really attracting more students, even though I had the videos. And that went on for literally 2-3 years. And I was like, wow, I really expected things to be moving more, but I was definitely stuck in making any more financial prosperity. And of course, if your income is staying about the same thing for 6 years, you're falling behind because inflation is not stopping. Real estate prices are not stopping. Gas prices are not stopping. Everything's getting more expensive, right? And so, I was essentially financially stuck. But after I had this realization that, wow, I'm in desperate need. I realized I'm in desperate need. My subconsciousness had known it for years. I was desperate in need for someone to slap some sense into me. My subconscious mind knew that, but my conscious mind did not realize it. And when I allowed myself to realize what had been there, dwelling and trying to get out, in my subconscious mind, right after that, KRS calls me up and he goes, oh, I just heard about you, and I saw something of you on YouTube, and I hardly had any YouTube presence. And he was like, I want you on my channel. And I've been feeling stuck because over the years I created so much videos, so many courses, I've done so much work, yet I wasn't attracting more people. I wasn't attracting more prosperity. I wasn't attracting more students. It was very much a small scale thing. And then I made that shift in my subconsciousness about something that completely unrelated, about on my bava, my Rahu bava, my 7th bava, but that got the energy flowing through the whole chart. So KRS called me up, and he has me on his channel. He had about 40,000 people on his channel at the time, like a fraction of what he has now. Yet that was enough people who are really into astrology that within 2 weeks my Kala sales doubled, and within 2 weeks my astrology subscription doubled, which in 2 weeks the sales on my report site doubled, and literally everything doubled overnight. So it was like everything got unstuck and just escalated to this next level, okay? And that was like, wow. And it had nothing to do with me trying to make it, but there was a subconscious shift that allowed the energy to flow through the chart, to hit the other bhavas, to hit the bhavas of this. I started getting better relationship with my children. So my children, that area of life has sort of been stuck for a while too, and not really getting more enjoyable. That area of life got better. All areas of life got better, but the most concrete, measurable one, of course, was the KRS thing. And so I wanted to use an example that if you're stuck on any area of life, because I was going, gosh, I've got so much content, but, I'm not doing any better than I was 8 years ago, I'm not doing any better professionally than I was 8 years ago. And it wasn't I really dwelled on, so I don't think about that much, because everyone was fed, and I was having fun with the work, and doing the work's always been most important to me. But I just recognized it's really strange that nothing has moved forward in the last several years. That I still can't buy a better house now than I could have 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and I can't provide more for the family now than I could have 5 years ago. It was like an observation of, And then as soon as I made that shift and allowed that subconsciousness of Rahu to manifest and realize consciously the subconscious needs, that Rahu bava to be manifested consciously or realized consciously, boom, everything started changing. And so we need to focus on counseling people about their subconscious needs indicated by the Rahu bava. Okay? They need to realize that those truly are important needs to them. Not that they're the only needs, but they're the important needs that they're suppressing and pushing down. And since they're pushing those Rahu needs down, their life's going to get stuck. The energy will get there, the energy of the circle, of the zodiac, will get to that Rahu bava and get pushed down. And they'll get to that Rahu bava and get pushed down. If the energy is pushed down, how's it going to flow out of the Rahu bava and flow around the chart? It can't. It gets stuck. And so literally what's happening is, as we make subconscious realizations, our magnetic dynamo that we are, that attracts everything into our life, the energetic electromagnet that we are, attracts new things into our life, better things, and our whole life goes uphill. We get better health. Who knows what it is? Wherever we're stuck most, manifests. In all levels, increased. So the most important thing we can do is become conscious of what's in our subconscious mind. Anytime somebody's stuck and keeps coming to you year after year and complaining year after year that they still don't have this, they still don't have this, it doesn't matter what they're complaining about. Like one person who's done that, they've got their Atma Karaka and Moon in the 7th house. They're always complaining about their love lives, obviously, because so much of their consciousness is focused on their love life. But the key to their love life becoming unstuck is not their love life. The key to their love life becoming unstuck is their Rahu house, which is a completely different house that has nothing to do with love. And until they embrace that Rahu position, the house, and also the sign under the house, and allow those things to be realized as conscious needs, they will be stuck in all areas of their life, including the area of life that they're most focused on, which is where their Atmakarika and Moon is, okay? Which is for them the love house, the relationship house. So, if somebody's stuck with an area, don't just assume you need to go to that house and study it. No, start with the Rahu house, and then go to the Ketu house and work with their Rahu and Ketus. And really, all healing is something that's unknown coming into our consciousness. Something that's unknown in our subconsciousness being realized consciously in our conscious mind. That's what healing is. I've also seen with homeopathy, and having really benefited from those, when I benefited most has always been when I had a conscious realization of something about me that was deeply buried, of a behavior I had that I had no awareness I even had, of reactions I had to certain things that I wasn't even aware that I reacted that way. And then I would, actually heal even without the homeopath sometimes. I was able just to say, okay, I would let that thing into my conscious realization, and even without taking the homeopath, literally heal. So, being sick, having aches and pains is being stuck. Why are we stuck? Because of something that's in our subconsciousness that we won't allow ourselves to realize. So, all pain is, all sickness is, whatever your symptoms are, is because there's something in your subconsciousness that you won't realize. A need you won't realize, a reaction you have that you won't consciously realize, something unpleasant about yourself that you won't consciously acknowledge. And by unpleasant, I mean something you deem as unpleasant, something you have a bad reaction to that you don't want to acknowledge to yourself, so it remains subconscious. And those things go into the cells, make our bodies sick, literally make our bodies sick, make us emotionally sick, make us mentally sick. So through consciously realizing those things, we get better, we heal. And most of the things that we need to consciously realize have to do with the bava signs, the placement of Rahu. Because that's what's consciously most suppressed. Why is it suppressed? Because the subconscious need of Ketu to survive and feel secure is the strongest need. And it pushes down any other competing need. And the Rahu needs are felt as direct competition to the survival needs, the need to be okay of Ketu's position. Okay? So we're dealing with very, very heavy things. And you can imagine, anyone who's had any training in psychology or studying in psychology can imagine really the ramifications of Rahu and Ketu and how I could never finish this course if I wanted to really talk about them in every possible way that we can imagine. This is already going to be a long course. But we need to understand the principles and then really see how any helpful therapy is going to revolve around this process of becoming conscious of what's unconscious, which means to become conscious of Rahu and Ketu. Ketu is the significant of liberation. It's where God is found in the chart. So even liberation is becoming conscious of Ketu, conscious of the manifesting divine, okay? Becoming liberated. So our whole work, the whole reason we're here is to become conscious of Rahu and Ketu. And the first level of that is becoming conscious of what's in our subconsciousness. And all the things we've talked about the security paradigm, that's an unconscious paradigm. The person doesn't write on their, in their diary, my goal is to be a Ketu in the second house person or a Ketu in the third house person. They don't write that down. But their subconscious goal is that. And so that's the goal they achieve. They'll write down, I want to be married and loved and have 3 children by the time I'm 30. Yet, by the time they're 30, all they've achieved is their security paradigm of Ketu, and marriage and love was not part of that, so they don't have it. Okay? So no one is, we have to realize what's in our subconsciousness, realize what Ketu, how Ketu is ruling and sometimes ruining your life. Realize how those subconscious needs of Ketu are making the choices for you. When you realize that, you can make any choice you want. But if you don't realize who's running the show, how do you talk to the boss? You need to know who the boss is, and you need to know what the boss is up to, and then you can advise the boss better. And that's what we need to do with our subconsciousness. It's the boss. It's running the show. If we really know how, why and how the boss is running the show, how can we even begin to communicate with the boss and ask the boss for other things and make our lives go forward? We can't. Okay? So this is what we need to learn to do here. Okay, enough on that. We'll get into the bhavas proper next video. Thank you.